Adolfo, and thank you for being here with us to talk a little bit about your research. If you could please take a moment to introduce yourself.
Sure, no problem. Thank you for inviting me. My name's Adolfo Romero. I'm a second year MALA student for the Center American Studies Department. Uh, and my major is MALAS, for the Latin American Studies.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your research and what drew you to this field?
Sure, no problem. So what drew me into the research? So it kind of came a combination of different things, but I think it's throughout my courses that I was taking. As I'm a couple of my courses, professors that I talked to. Originally, I was supposed to write on the racialization of African Americans, Haitians, and Afro Caribbeans. But even before then, actually, when I first arrived to UF, I wanted to write on. I should have began there. I wanted to do issues on displacement and gentrification. But like the resources that the center provides, the people, the connections, they kind of like I had to reshape a little bit my way of doing my work, just because of like some of your plans are not other people's plans or advisors that could help you out with what you're looking for exactly. So you have to kind of reshape all that, and so I did. I was doing about race, a lot of issues on race, but one of the things, as this year early in March, I had one of my courses with Dr. Sunday, I remember. And from that point on, I was still working on my project, but then I realized like what I wanted to do was not feasible for the time frame that I had available. And so I was like, what am I going to do? Like I was already like working towards like towards my final project for the semester in her course. And then I told her, I'm not sure what I want to do. Like I'm like at this point, like I don't know if it's feasible to interview like 20, 30 people, and not just that, like I think an issue that people don't take in consideration, if you're not similar to other people, meaning like I'm not African American or Black, I'm not Afro Caribbean, it's kind of hard to come in with my positionality for that project. Like, who am I to come in and do all this? Well, it's not impossible. It just requires you to have more resources available at the time. And honestly, this is my first year at UF. Well, at that point, it was my first year. I barely knew people. And so I realized that it was going to be a struggle. And realistically speaking, that was not going to happen. But luckily, Dr. Resende kind of saw through that. And I told her, I explained to her, and she kind of like helped me out. She took the initiative. She's like, my husband, he works with the Farmworkers Association of Florida, and they're trying to do an investigation on the mental well-being of farm workers. And I was like, okay, that sounds more interesting. Yeah, and like there's different types of groups. They're trying to interview Creole, Haitians that speak Creole. They're trying to interview Latinos, and that means like Mexican Americans, Central Americans a little bit. And so anyone that's in the field. And I was like, well, that sounds more around my alley, I suppose. And she's like, yeah, and then once you start forming those bonds, then you could ask like, like Haitians more about what you want to study and work with. And I was like, well, at first that was my plan. So she's like, do you want to like go with that study for the summer? And I was like, sure, why not? So I started traveling all the way to Apopka, which is one of the 5 locations of the Farmworkers Association. And yeah, the first week, that was during February, March, I went down to Belgrade. I saw the conditions that farm workers were living, very horrible in my opinion, devastating per se, lack of resources, lack of housing, a lot of issues that I wanted to center my research in. And so then I realized, you know what, this is great. I started interviewing people. Every interview was taking me like 4 hours to do. It wasn't an easy interview, 4 hours, but we were like trying to understand like their mental well-being based off depression, weight, how much wages they win. And because they're part of the community that are essential workers, but yet they're marginalized by society. And so I wanted to try to shed some light on their mental well-being, because a lot of people don't realize, but farm workers face one of the highest suicidal rates amongst any industry. They're very isolated in a lot of camp fields by themselves at times, those that migrate from H-2A workers that come into Florida. Some of the quarters where they live, They live with multiple people. It's not one or two people, but multiple people living together. And I realized I did not approve of those conditions. And it kind of hit me back with my grandpa. He came here through the Braceros program back in the 1950s, 60s. He came over and he was a farm worker as well. And so I'm like, but then he went back to Mexico. But I was like, this is important. That's what kind of drew me to start that program. But COVID came in. That changed everything, everything, especially with the community of farm workers, like you really actually need close contact to do any types of projects with them, just because some of them lack technological resources. And not just that, so many don't know about technological resources and how to use them. And so I had to restructure my whole thing, because I was working not with the association, with the association, but I was mainly on that project, just to get those interviews about mental health and all that. But during that semester, which was the spring semester, I was able to write more papers, familiarize myself with what farm workers is. What is it? What are the issues that they face? Such as pesticide usage that they have to go through, bad conditions of that, heat stress illnesses, mental well-being illnesses. There's a lot of things that are going on with that community. And once I wrote that paper in this spring, I kind of cemented a little bit about my knowledge on them. I won't say perfectly, but definitely it helped me to understand a little bit of who they are and what they do and what they're trying to do. And so unfortunately, we had to cancel that project. The project got canceled due to COVID. We couldn't continue interviewing people. And I had barely started working, like 2 weeks already there. I was going to be working over the summer. I was going to stay in an RV. We had already rented the RV. We had already rented everything. And I was driving back and forth from Belgrade to Gainesville, which is like 2 hours away every week. And I was doing it for like a month and a half until eventually, like we had to shut it down. I'm like, dang, so what do I do now? What am I going to do? And then I talked to Antonio, which is the head coordinator the executive coordinator for the Farmworkers Association. And he was like, well, Adolfo, like we talked a lot. We talked a lot. And he at last said like, hey, Adolfo, why don't you join in? Like, welcome to the Farmworkers Association. You could do your project here. And I'm like, hey, why not? Excellent. Let's turn this into an internship. Do the best that you can with the situations that you get handed, So I turned my capstone into internship. And I was like, so what are my duties now? Because it was kind of like, what does the Farmworkers Association exactly do? And those were some of my first questions. And then I started doing more research on that, understanding what they do. And it's like, they're not a charity organization, association. They're not about charity. They're about like empowering people, empowering individuals to become self-assertive, to become themselves, to become empowered. And through that empowered, they have political power, which ultimately they could have some type of control within the politics and the political system and create changes for their communities. That's what they try to do, offer resources to empower them. And so COVID came in. I was like, I told them I'm available whenever you want me to go, whatever you need me to do, because I was like, well, what am I going to do through the computer? I could just research the organization, but that's only going to get me so far. But I'm like, you know what? Realistically, it's 2 hours away. I could head over there. So what I did, I would drive down to Apopka now. Every week, I would help out in distributing food. I would distribute food to the community. We would get from one of the foundations that they have or one of their collaborators, they would donate thousands of tons of food weekly, and we would go and distribute that food to the community. But not just that, I also started working with them, like doing COVID testing. Some of the days, like, because I know luckily I'm able to use my Spanish and English. A lot of them, they speak Spanish or they don't speak Spanish, they speak English or vice versa. And so I was able to like translate a lot of the work, do some surveys for them on the COVID testing, do the setup for COVID testing. That was back in March, April. And then I started since then, we were almost done with school. And like I said, I kept researching more, writing some papers on that. And June, July, May came in. During those months, I was working luckily at the Samuel Proctor Oral History program at the same time, just to cover some of my costs as well. And I did that. I worked, and luckily over here at the Samuel Proctor, we have a big connection with the Farmworkers Association. And so I've been doing a lot of the previous research that other previous students have conducted, like they've conducted interviews with farm workers. I've gone through those interviews. We created a podcast, which we're actually just recently showcased, and every week we're producing a new podcast, which we already have them available. They're not long, but nonetheless, I became a little bit more aware working here, collaborating with the association. But May, June, July, I would drive down there and help as much as I could in any things that they needed. Sometimes Antonio, like the coordinator, he needed me to do some statistics on COVID cases, which now I'm actually the one doing the COVID cases for the locations of the Farm Workers Associations. In the 5 locations that they have, I bring down the numbers and I create charts to see like how it has impacted from like March to now. And why is it increasing in areas? And based off that, we're able to distribute more face masks or PPE gear. I've also helped them translate different documents with different collaborators that they're working across the nation from Canada to Mexico, and just write letters to them and that they support some of our ordinances that we're trying to get passed. I'm working right now on an ordinance with the Southwest on environmental safety. And it's just, that's one of the things. I'm also doing trainings with hurricane, you know, like there's some Hurricane Maria that came in a couple of years ago. The farm workers, they kind of like help out on preparing people, how to prepare. And I've been trained to help prepare people on that. Also right now, I'm currently trying to take some courses on pesticide usage to train other people in community around the communities in the 5 locations, go out and introduce or produce some information about what's been going on and just tell them, bring more awareness to those issues. But I have been doing a lot of work with them, and through them also the housing system crisis, you know, with the moratorium being in play. Luckily, I was able to work this summer with labor. Well, I'm still working with them. We actually started the first Alachua County Tenants Association, an actual association for the county. And it was between 4 of us that worked through the Alachua County Labor Coalition. And every Monday we go and try to like reach out to the community based off the eviction cases that they get through the county, from the Alachua County. We go through the records and we pull out all the names, and we see like the increase, the decrease of it. And all of that has been helpful because I've learned a lot of the techniques through the Farm Workers Association and those issues that are persistent in the communities. And I've been doing a lot of things, I guess that's what I'm saying, like throughout the spectrum. But nonetheless, I'm still writing right now my thesis and my experiences. You know, not everything's perfect, I'll say, but those are challenges as being an intern that I had to face. And sometimes it's like, you know, you're like, oh, is this somewhere you want to be at, like in the nearby future? You know, it makes you question stuff like that. And I'm like, I just take it as it is. And I try not to take sides. It's very difficult to take sides. But I just try to do my work. I try to help out as much as possible whenever I can. But the pandemic did affect it.
Yeah, I was going to say that was incredible. You had a really an impressive and, you know, with a lot of things going on during the last semester for you. Congratulations for all the things that you have overcome so far and all the things that you have achieved. I'm curious to understand a little bit of 2 things. What kind of resource you have been able to use that help you at UF? And also, what advice would you give to other students that are facing similar challenge as they are, you know, studying now and preparing for their research next summer?
Okay, so a resource that has been aiding me a lot, honestly, is the library. The library, I mean, you know, I guess that's all knowledge comes from somewhere. The library, I want to say the library has provided me that, but not just that, my job as a GA where I'm working right now, or TA almost, that I'm like teaching as well. All those things have kind of like helped me cement myself. Those resources like the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program and the library. I would say those are the primary resources. As per the question of what advice would I give to the next semester students, I would say connect, attend social events if you're able to. I understand COVID-19, man. Nobody wants to go out. Nobody wants to go out. But you know, in the next upcoming 2 weeks, couple of weeks, we're going to have an event, and there's some first cohort students. They need to connect it in a different way, or at least, even if you don't meet, I'm not saying you should meet because that's kind of rough too. But what I would suggest, try to stay in touch with your professors, advisors, communicate with people, even if people know what's going on. You know, it's difficult to interact with each other, but I mean, that's why it's more likely that they'll try to communicate with you online, try to like make some type of connection with you online. But you have to, as a student, you have to go out there and reach out to your professors, to your advisors, to other administrators that you think might be helpful for your research or potentially be resourceful for your research. But also, you know, like when you get a committee members and when you get a lot of committee members, make sure that they're the ones that you need, you know, because some of them, like I've heard stories, you know, some of them you're good, but they're not like really, they're not enticed to your project, and they're not there all the time as much as you might need them. But nonetheless, like, I mean, just make sure that you have the right people working on your team, and don't give up. This is only the beginning. We're probably, I'm not sure how much longer this is going to be around, but you know, right now we're starting a pandemic project over here at SPA, and we're interviewing all types of lives just to see how that have impacted pretty much what we're doing right now, Igor. But nonetheless, my advice is to stay strong and reach out to people. Reach out to people.
Thank you so much, Adolfo, for sharing with us. We always enjoy learning about the different research that our students are doing. I'm sure other students who are just getting started on their research will find it beneficial to learn about the experience that you went through. And as I mentioned, congratulations for all the work you have been done. That's been extremely interesting and amazing. And congratulations to you.
No, thank you, Igor. Pleasure being here.